Great. Good morning, everyone. My name's Giles from NASCEE. We're just gonna wait for people to give ourselves a couple of minutes for everyone to get on the call. And then so yeah, if you just give us a couple of minutes, be much appreciated. Thanks. I'm the CEO of NASCEE. We are really excited by this opportunity to partner with IPASA, who are a strategic partner of NASCEE's. And one of NASCEE's primary mandates is to drive stronger coordination and collaboration in the education sector. It's probably the area where we have the biggest impact on learner outcomes, and supporting the Department of Education to get access to innovation, and evidence-based innovation that can potentially scale. So it's the area of our work that really has the potential to drive, like I said, impact for that we super passionate about and have been driving. And it just makes so much sense to partner with IPASA and others so that we are practicing what we're preaching. And so this is a collaboration in and of itself. IPASA has done some fantastic work in building this case study, the series of case studies that we're gonna be talking about one of them today. But the work that Tara Polson-Guacha has done is something that most of you should have a look at. We'll obviously be looking at one of the projects that will be focused. But I think from NASCEE's side, this is really important work for us. We want to thank IPASA for the partnership, and we want to really thank those of you that have joined the call, and would appreciate your feedback at the end. As a series, this is the first of 3 for now, probably going to be more, but we're really excited about it. Great to have you all on the call, and look forward to a session that brings some nuggets of insights to all of you, and hopefully moves us from collaboration to action, which is what we really want to see. So I want to hand over to Tara, who was the person who did the original research. And Tara's going to be taking us through some of the insights that came out of that research, and that will then lead from there into the panel discussion, where you'll get a little bit more insights into this piece of work that's been run in partnership in Mpumalanga, with a series of implementing partners as well as the Department of Education. So yeah, thanks to everyone who's put this together, and looking forward to a good session. Tara, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Giles. Thank you, NASCEE. Thank you, IPASA, for the opportunity to do this work and to present it to all of you. Let me go ahead and screen share. Is that visible?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. So, as Giles mentioned, this case study related to the Mpumalanga Grade R collaboration is one of 9 case studies that were done in this series. And the focus of the series is on collaboration in the education system. So in contrast to many other studies or conversations that we have, the focus isn't so much about what did we do. It's more about how did we do it together? What were the challenges, but also the benefits of collaboratively doing this work that each of the members of the collaboration were also already doing, but what does it do? How does it change the situation to bring it together? So the case studies are all structured in a similar way. I'm going to talk through briefly for the introduction the why, the who, the how, the when, and the so what of this particular collaboration. And really then after that, this short introduction, the panel will be where I think you'll get the biggest meat of the experiences. So let's start by why this collaboration was brought together. Maybe just very briefly, for those of you who don't know it, we are talking about an intervention that's focused on grade R. The Mpumalanga grade R collaboration maybe suggests that. It is bringing together multiple intervention organizations who, so there's one WordWorks that has a very established literacy program at this age group. Then there's Red Ink that has a very established maths program. There's PenReach that has a very established relationship across multiple parts of the education system in Mpumalanga. Then there's the Roger Federer Foundation and the School Readiness Initiative that were also previously working in grade R in Mpumalanga, that have sort of foundations for teachers to assess learners, have a structured learning program. And then you have Trackosaurus that also has an assessment process, a learner self-assessment process. So there are a range of organizations that have brought their content, their complementary contents together into one integrated, layered program. And that's really the question now about understanding what benefit did that bring, what challenges did it bring, what can we learn from that. So there are a range of reasons generally why people enter into collaborations, and we see in this one that we had several of these. So one of the key components right at the bottom there, addressing fragmentation, building sector coherence, the sort of initiating factor was that the Roger Federer Foundation had been working in Mpumalanga for a number of years. The funding cycle for that particular intervention was coming to an end. They were wanting to ensure sustainability in the relationship with government that was already there and was already strong, but then heard that other organizations were having conversations with the province about bringing in other kinds of support for schools. And so the question then was, is this now a situation of competition? Will these other programs replace the previous program in the practice of the schools, in the teacher practice? Or is there some way of thinking about this differently that doesn't make it a question of competition? How do we actually bring what we so often see in the sector across the country, which is a fragmented approach to approaching schools, approaching provinces? How do we not fragmentize, but how do we actually cohere? So building sector coherence at that provincial decision-making process. But then also, if we look at the next one about system adoption coherence, how do we actually think about this from the perspective of the teacher? What makes it easy for the teacher to understand that there are multiple inputs and supports that they can receive that actually work together, that are not competing for her time and for her attention, and she doesn't have to choose between them, but can actually combine them. So understanding the province perspective, understanding the teacher perspective, when that became clear to the actors, then it also became, okay, actually, we can also really achieve technical complementarity and resource efficiency. So this was another goal, and create a sort of set of shared measurement tools, a range of resources that benefit the teacher, benefit the schooling system overall in the province, but actually also really benefit the constituent members of the collaboration. And so a core underlying stratum under this why, under the purpose of collaborating, was that you had a history of existing relationships. And this really is the core theme across everything I'm going to talk about and ask the panel members about, but really what came out of the whole case study series is that you have a much longer sort of foundation of relationships than any particular project. The projects sit on top of this soil that's been composting for a while, these relationships that have been there, and that's actually what's the generative sort of resource, the food for the education system. So if that's what we're trying to achieve, we're trying to achieve a coherent sector that makes sense at the provincial, at the teacher level, that is efficient. Who now is doing this? So I've mentioned this briefly. This is described more in the actual case study. But what we can see here is that, of course, the Mpumalanga Department of Education, absolutely the core sort of holding institution for everything that is happening in the public education system. The gray brings together then the actual collaborative organizations working with government. Of course, the government itself is part of that collaboration. Penreach acting as the integrating space. So we'll come back to the how that happened just now. With you have layers of content from Roger Federer Foundation in terms of the foundations. Then you have WordWorks for language, Red Inks for math. You have learner-directed assessment as a pilot, Trackosaurus. You have two funders, again, Roger Federer playing both the implementing content provider and the funder provider. And then you have the Get It Done Foundation. And then actually in the case study report, NASCEE hadn't yet taken on the formal backbone supporting secretarial function, but it now has. So I've now added that in as well. So you can see the number of organizations involved and that they play different roles. And then the functions. So we'll talk a bit more about the shared M&E system steering committee that go into making this possible. So once again, history and existing relationships are what brought everything together. So all of these organizations had some prior relationship, either with multiple or at least one of the other ones. So the Penreach and the Mpumalanga Department of Education have been working together since 1991. WordWorks and Red Ink have been working together for an extremely long time. The Roger Federer Foundation and some of the individuals within Roger Federer have been working with WordWorks and Red Ink. Trackosaurus, Red Ink, the Get It Done Foundation. So you can see there's an incredible sort of network that made it possible for this group of organizations in this particular place and this particular time to come together in this formation. All right, how does this work? What actually enables this group of people to come together? It's sure, the existing relationships facilitate that to some extent. It's easier. As one of the key people said in the interview, you know, I had everybody's phone numbers already. I'd met them before. So it was much easier to pick up the phone and say, I hear you want to do something in Mpumalanga. We're already there. Let's have a conversation. But nonetheless, you then still have to make that real. You have to practice this potential, right? So the first key point described in the case studies is that the organizations need to have a collaborative culture. They need to have that initial thought that here is an opportunity for collaboration rather than seeing it as a competitive environment. The second part of this is the hard work of design alignment. So particularly in this case, where you don't have a sort of trains, like a, you know, sometimes you have interventions where you have a very clear division of labor. Somebody works with the school managing body and somebody else works with the teachers, right? Or you have a progressive. So you do grade R and we'll take over grade 1. Or you have, a very clear distinction between literacy and numeracy. In this case, the entire design was, how do we integrate our respective approaches so that it isn't, you do that, I'll do this. We'll just let each other know that we each did our thing, but we're not doing it together. So what does that actually mean, to layer and to bring it together? And there was quite a process. I think in the panel, I'd love to hear a bit more of a reflection on that from the participants. So in order to achieve design alignment, what you need is a shared understanding of the ultimate goal. What do we want the teacher, and what do we especially want the learners to come out with at the end? And then what are our respective roles, not just individually, but collectively, in achieving that? And what is the humility in that? Because as organizations, we tend to think of ourselves as being able to do most of the cycle of achieving impact with a learner or with a teacher. What does it feel like when you are just part of a larger whole? A third part of this is shared measurement. So once you've decided what you want to achieve, how do we actually measure this? That makes it much more concrete. So I think one of the most powerful quotes in the case study was really this idea that jointly determining how the success of the collaboration would be measured became the beginning of the real collaboration in terms of shared strategic thinking. So it was a vehicle for achieving this shared goal, for the shared humility about how we get there, and in fact clarifying where there were gaps and misunderstandings and differences of view. Because if each organization comes in with their own program and thinks it can just come together like a Lego piece, actually, only when you actually build it do you notice that your holes are bigger than my pegs, or the other way around, and it doesn't actually cohere. And then you have to retool, you have to reorganize yourself. So those conversations, and they're not easy conversations, are incredibly important and were incredibly important to this group of organizations. And then finally, the recognition that there are multiple backbone functions. So this idea of a backbone comes from social impact, collective impact theory. Along with a range of other preconditions for achieving systemic collective impact, is this idea that somebody has to play these roles of keeping everything together. But that's quite vague. There are actually different functions within that. So within this collaboration, many others as well, and these are not the only roles there are, but there are certainly distinct roles related to governance, related to relationship management, and related to project coordination. And initially, different parts of this collaboration group played different roles. So there was a steering committee for the governance, and that was chaired in different ways. There were different relationship roles. So Penreach as the core relationship with government, which others then participated in, but also relationships among the partners. There was project coordination related to the monitoring and evaluation lead, for example, and the financial accountability. There were a range of different functions. One of the things we'll discuss in the panel is how some of those functions, at least, have now migrated into NASCEE, and how that process worked, and what that has now done in terms of the nature of the collaboration. All right, I'm almost at the end because, of course, the panel is much, much more interesting for this. Another key part of the insights from these case studies, from all of them really, is that a particular project is almost inevitably much, much, much shorter than the underlying collaborative relationships. So in this case, you'll see at the top there, the relationships that informed this particular project, which is going from 2025 till 2029, I think. Some of them started in 1991. And so, and they layer, these relationships layer on top of each other. So you've got your timeline at the bottom there. Penreach has a relationship with the government, as we've said. There's an existing relationship between some of the other content actors, WordWorks and Red Ink. Then you have a particular program that's been running, so Roger Federer's SRI program in Mpumalanga for a number of years. Then you have the particular context shift of the function shift within the Department of Basic Education taking on grade R. You have other collaborations like Trachosaurus with Penreach in Mpumalanga. And then you have this particular project with a particular name, with a particular combination of actors sitting on top of all of those relationships. Another important point from this image is that, yes, there's a whole long chain of relationships leading up to this project, but they don't stop with the project. There's also a future to these relationships through and after the project. And so the project's role is not just to capitalize on and benefit from the past relationships. Its role is also to continue building the strength of future relationships. And so collaborations play that role of continuing to build this subsoil of this very generative subsoil of relationships. So what outcomes do we then get from a collaborative grade R program? So usually we talk about impacts in terms of number of children reached and their learning outcomes, right? But what are the outcomes and the impacts of an actual collaboration? So I think 3 of these really, again, coming back to the original goals, are sustainability, partner learning, and efficiency. So the program, even though it's really just started about a year now, has in fact succeeded in achieving a level of systemic cohesion and ensuring, for now, the longevity of previously funded programs. So the cost effectiveness of a particular program now also includes the extent to which it enabled the long-term benefit of past investments to continue. Partner learning, there are at least 2 components that I've picked out here. We'll hear more in the panel discussion. So one of the points that was mentioned in the interviews for this case study was how important it was in the conversation between the partners to really land on the core problem statement being changed classroom practice. So yes, of course, at some point we're trying to get to changed learner knowledge, but where do we have to achieve that? We have to achieve that through changed classroom practice. And for all of the partners to really recognize together that that was a gap that's often not really focused on enough, was it very important. And many of those partners said, well, we're never going to overlook that again. We're going to focus on that whatever we do in future. So that's a real learning process. Similarly, M&E framework, this hard work of integrating the metrics. So deepened each partner's internal M&E practice, but also then produced a set of metrics that possibly other early learning programs can benefit from. And then we can start building more and more of a shared conversation and a shared data backend and a range of tools around measurement that mean that we're wasting less time and effort on fragmented evaluations, that we're just learning better together. And then finally, efficiency. So there has been, as reported by the partners, a real cost efficiency of co-delivery of previously independent interventions through a single implementing agency. But it's not just about this one instance of saving money for some funders. It's about learning the principle of how to integrate multiple layered interventions and providing them through a single implementing agency. That is the real efficiency gain for the system if it can be documented and shared. Okay, so actually I'm going to end there and hand it back to our chair. I think, Viwe, are you taking over from here to take us to the panel discussion? But just, I think you can see in the chat, there are links to this case study as well as many of the others. And we hope that you will take the opportunity and read through in a bit more detail. But really the important thing is the conversation we're about to have. So let me hand this back to our chair.
Thank you so much, Tara, for that informative presentation. Before we head into our panel discussion, we just have like 5 or 10 minutes for a quick Q&A with Tara based on her presentation. So if there's any questions, you can put your hand up and you'll have mic permissions to speak, or you can put questions in the chat. But if there's no questions at this time, then we'll move on to our panel. But you can still, of course, add your questions in the chat. So I'll give like 2 minutes for people to maybe think about their questions. Then if there's nothing, I'll hand back to you, Tara, to facilitate our panel discussion. Okay, it doesn't really seem like we've got any burning questions. So I'll hand back to you, Tara, to head into our panel discussion, and then I'll keep an eye on the chat. So if anything comes up, I'll also just flag that for you.
Okay, thank you very much. We've got 4 wonderful people in our panel. I don't think Kali's joined us, unfortunately, so it's just the 4. Maybe can I ask Nelly, Susanna, Mamuso, and Klingiwe to just show your faces. So Nelly and Susanna are together. There's Klingiwe and there's Mamuso. So here's our panel. I'm going to ask particular questions of each person, but then it'll flow from one to the other. So I don't have formal introductions about each person's background, but Nelly Ledwaba is with the Mpumalanga Department of Education. Maybe when you start, you can just briefly share your title and role with us. Susanna Behrens is the CEO of Penreach. Actually, so Nelly is the Director General Education and Training for Mpumalanga Department of Education. Susanna Behrens is the CEO of Penreach. Mamusa Makanya is the Executive Director of WordWorks, and Hlengiwe Molefe is Senior Project Manager with NASCEE. So what we have is we have a government perspective, we have the sort of core implementing agency, we've got Mamuso WordWorks is one of the sort of technical partners, and then Hlengiwe with NASCEE, the backbone function. But there is a lot of overlap between these roles. Okay, so can we start with you, Nelly? Could you just share your experience from the perspective of government? For you, what is the value of collaborating with independent funders and NGOs? And especially, what is the value of collaborating with a consortium like this one? Because of course you collaborate with this NGO here and that NGO there and this funder there. But how is it different for you when you have a whole group of people coming to you and saying, we want to work with you, we are working together and we want to work with you?
Good morning, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And thanks very much, Tara. Your presentation is really informative. one has to really appreciate it because it gave a good background about what we are doing as this consortium. Yeah, like you said, I'm Nelly Lidwaba, the Director for General Education and Training, that is your grade R to grade 9. The role I'm playing is just to make sure that all the programs that implement CAPS in our schools are rolled out properly as planned or as per the directive by the national department. So I'm representing the province to make sure that we unpack that and implement the ATP in schools, and we capacitate educators, and we further make sure that we assess learners against what is in the CAPS and in the ATP. That's briefly what I'm doing. And coupled with that, the reason why we are here is to say one is coordinating the consortium with Penrich. And the question was, what is the value about everything else that we are doing? You know, we're realizing a very huge value by this consortium in the sense that if it is coordinated at one place, it is easier for the department to follow suit and provide advice rather than if you find ourselves, you know, having all these different NGOs approaching the department to come and, you know, fund whatever programs that they would be coming up with. So to start with, I think I should give an overview to say, as the department, we've got our own priorities or directive as shared by the National Department of Education. And for the Department of Education provincially, we look at the priorities and make sure that they are in our annual operational plan. And as we agree to the NGOs or the funders, we make sure that we sit around the table with the funders to look at what do they want to bring. And in the main, we find that whatever they need to bring to our schools, it is in line with the directive or the priorities of the department. And in this instance, it would be the issue of literacy and numeracy, improvement of learner performance with regard to the two. So we're finding ourselves, you know, adding value as a consortium because all this funding come to our schools. You know that this department or government, I don't want to talk negative about it, but we find ourselves not having enough financial muscle to can implement the programs in all our schools. And once we have a consortium like this, we enter into the MOU, given all the priorities, and we make sure that the subject advisors, together with the funders, sit around the table so that we align everything to be what we need. And as we conduct the capacity building of our teachers, in the main, we're finding ourselves being very successful when we have the consortium or the funders, because they come with resources, not necessarily the, you know, to say it's money, but whatever intervention that is brought in the classroom for us, it, you know, it's a good achievement because we find that the schools that have been identified as in the consortium, they perform better as compared to the baseline that we have conducted upon starting the program or the project. So what might make us most successful is that we align and we make sure that we coordinate everything accordingly. You know, as you were presenting, you mentioned issues of system adaptation, and coherence. And that is where it comes to, because we would have, made sure that everything about the project addresses the needs down there. It will be like a joke, because those schools that have been identified in the consortium, Susanna and Tara and everyone else, is to say we're finding them performing and even welcoming the intervention, because it is coordinated in a manner that it tends to strengthen the capacity at school level, rather than when each and every NGO approaches the school. So it works better. You have just said Pembridge started in 1991. And as Department of Education, we are saying, yes, everything about us need to be coordinated under one umbrella, because it makes it easier for us to participate in meetings. It makes it easier for us to make follow-ups and even to talk to the gaps or the challenges as in a consortium, rather than each and every person approaching the department in line with the coming up with the intervention programs. I think I should pause there, but we have human resource, of course, as the Department of Education. We've got our subject advisors, we've got our lead teachers, and we've got even our managers. And as that workforce, we as well make sure that whatever is brought forth, agreed upon, we support and implement, and as well as participate where applicable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I really appreciate the way in which you ended by reminding us that, of course, the actual work is done by the department. The inputs by the consortium, this or any of the other ones, is an addition to support the work of the department. But the core teaching work is, of course, the department. And if you're looking at, I was at a presentation recently, and I think Dr. Pumi Mohotwane said from the DBE, from the National DBE, she said, in terms of timelines, you are all thinking about sustainability 5-10 years. The department is here forever, like until the country stops existing. So it's a very different kind of timeline. So that's important as well. All right, well, that links very nicely to the question I wanted to ask to Susanna, which is from the perspective of an NGO who's been especially present in a particular geography in Mpumalanga for such a long time. From your perspective, what are the most important components or elements of the relationship with government? And then what effect has this particular collaboration had on that relationship that you've had for such a long time?
Yes, thank you, Tara, and so just thank you for the opportunity to share the learning in this forum. I think the particularly important components would sort of fall under a couple of categories. One to mention is definitely having a memorandum of understanding. And maybe for a bit of background, Penrich has been working, as we said, in the province for so many years, and working across the education spectrum. And that definitely needs to be captured in a structure such as a formal MOU with the province. And that is an ongoing tool that we have in place to govern that relationship. I think also important component would be that the relationships are established at different levels. So while there is an extremely strong relationship at provincial level, you also need to establish them at district level or circuit level and ensure that you have depth to have those relationships at school level as well, together with the department. So it's not a one or all. It definitely is sort of a collaborative approach in terms of relationships as well. Perhaps very important is the fact that as an NGO that has been working within the province for so long, we really understand our role as being complementary to what the department needs to effect in terms of learning, and that our focus is on the practice side, not on compliance. We don't blur the roles at all, and that we don't start creating parallel systems at all. So there's definitely a joint understanding or a shared understanding of where we can help build capacity versus establishing something that should run parallel. Maybe those are just some of the key components of for us, a strong relationship we've built. And how the consortium has changed it, I think just at a very high level, I do think it's actually, in fact, strengthened the relationship that Penrich has with the department. You know, sometimes if you work alone in a province for long, you could come to a point where you develop blind spots, even blind spots together. You could find yourself in a space where you lose the space where you deeply reflect together. And having a consortium of this quality of thinkers and doers being brought together, it really, that fresh perspective that came with it, with all the partnerships and the individuals, helped us to not only have a different perspective of the actual work, but a different perspective, I think, on our relationship with province, and are we making the most of what we have? So it's an asset what we have, and we could really reflect on that. So I think in that sense, it's built the relationship well, and it sort of shifts the dynamic as well, which is nice. It's fresh. There are more voices suddenly around the table, and those voices maybe help you consider what you need to advocate for, or it reinforces what you thought you needed to advocate for, but now you have more voices confirming that for you, or what you need to be challenged on. And so I think that's also a sort of subtle shift, but the shift that the consortium brought. I can use an example. For example, you shared the integrated MIL framework for NPR, and the consortium basically made us think that we don't need to have separate measurement systems. As the NGO and as the department, there really is a way to sort of integrate this and make this work in practice. So I think it has had an extremely positive effect. You also mentioned that the department would be there for posterity into the future. It's very similar for an organization such as Penrich, which is very regional and located and deeply entrenched within a province, that even after NPR, the active implementation comes to an end, there is still an organization, yes, that works with the department for continuity. I'll end there for now, Tara. You're on mute.
Yes, sorry, there we go. I mean, I think that last point you just made about, you know, you have this long-term relationship with the department and with the province before and after this project. You've also had relationships with other partner NGOs and funders before and after this project. So this question of iterative collaboration, I'm going to ask you this, and then I'm going to ask Mamusa the same question right after you. So what have you learned about sort of iterative collaboration? What have you learned about collaboration over time? How have you changed the ways in which you collaborate? And how have the relationships with the partners adjusted from before NPR and now during NPR?
Yes, think that has been one of the key takeouts of the whole process, and also the process as it was facilitated by yourself and IPASA and helped us reflect on this, is that collaboration is not static. It's ever evolving, so an ever evolving state. Most particularly, I suppose, we evolved from a space of organizational interest to one where we have definitely have shared outcomes in mind, as was presented also. So over time, over the past year and a half, as we've discussed this and really spent time on it together, I think in practice, it's, for me, the shift has been not on if there's a challenge or if there's a reflection that needs to happen, not on who is right or who needs to step in and do what, but asking what needs to change. And it really has become a space where whoever is strongest, best suited, available, is the one that can step in and is allowed to step in and has the support of all the partners. And I think that has been part of that iterative process and getting to a place of real strength as a consortium.
Thank you so much, Susanna. I'm going to ask that same question of you, Mamusa, now. So you've also been in various collaborative relationships with other people in this consortium beforehand. So what have you learned iteratively about collaboration, and how is some of that coming to fruition in this particular grouping for you?
Thanks, Tara, and to the rest of the panelists too. Yes, WordWorks has participated and still does participated in numerous collaborations that are structured differently, that are funded differently. Some mostly are with government, and some is just ourselves and other implementing partners. And I just wanted to just state that each one have their own benefits, dividends, and also challenges. What can become a clear con in one initiative, we've seen how that later can really become a constraint. And for us, what we've also learned is that context matter. In fact, I've never understood that statement until we came to Mpumalanga, to say you might have worked in Gauteng with GDE or WCD or Izani Sifunde, but we had never worked in Mpumalanga collaboratively with the department before, and the context matters, and that is very important for a lot of us who've had partnerships. For instance, we've worked with Red Ink in many settings. You know, you think you know each other's energy and what you bring to the table, but when you go to a different place like in Mpumalanga, you really need to be cognizant of your lessons are important. But however, you need to understand that context and what it requires, and how sensitively maybe you can bring to bear some of the lessons that you've heard. From the organizational point of view, it seems, you know, the collaborations we've been part of have really enhanced our work and changed how we do. We remember in working collaboratively with WCD and your Red Ink in the 2015-16, our service offering on the Grade R program, the home language, was very scant in terms of scope and what it and languages, you know. But by the time we moved to Gauteng, we were able to work with GDE to actually work with their heads of departments and experts in making sure that we're providing that same program to all the languages in South Africa. And that actually held us beautifully for going into Mpumalanga, because our home language program was now available in the languages of the province of Mpumalanga. So the lessons are many. We have been challenged also in terms of how we do things as an organization, but we have been also enhanced working with Henry, for instance, with the change agent. We've worked with a different kind of implementing model in different spaces. But in this instance, we had to sort of learn and see how do you serve as a master trainer and your own service offering and Red Ink to the change agent as they work with subject advisor in the program. So the lessons are many. You can't stay static. Collaborations evolve. For us is to take the lessons from each and see how it benefits maybe the next collaboration we become part of, mindful that that will have its own nuances, that will have its own context. For instance, Meneli mentioned about maybe the funding standing in terms of the Mpumalanga Education Department. It's a reality. Some of the collaborations we're part of, they were handsomely funded. Maybe some of even the provinces managed to put in funding in addition to the donor. When you come to Mpumalanga, you need to think differently and understand that the resources that are available in other geographies are not necessarily there. So how do you creatively maybe tweak the model without losing the intended outcomes? So yes, we change, we evolve, but we also stay true to what makes us as WordWorks, and bringing the male expertise in terms of what we've learned in the Izani Sifunde of a program that we were part of. We were able to share that value with the team that's led by Pendrich and the department in the critical role of male and data in this project. I think I'll end there.
Thank you very much, because I was going to ask you about sort of the role of the shared M&E framework and your experience with other collaborations. So before I move on to Hlengiwe, I just wanted to ask you for one more point on what you've just started talking about, which is that experience from Izani Sifunde, et cetera. It's like, what do you see as the most important backbone function? Or what are the different kinds of really important backbone functions in a collaboration based on the experience that you've had?
Yes, no, thanks, Tara. I mean, the issue of governance, structure, we've seen how critical that is, and you reference the Izani Sifunde. I'm mindful that it's different, but it's such a good insight that we sort of brought to this to suggest to the consortium here. That I remember initially we were sort of wobbly in terms of how we constitute ourselves, but setting up the steering committee as a governance structure and ensuring that the department is represented at the right level in these monthly steering committee. For us, it's so critical to be able to nip solutions, to look at funding gaps, to look at issues of strategy and solution with all the critical players, and understanding what all our roles are in those. They are important. And I know at times the meetings drag too long, but for a good cause. So the governance is quite critical. And what we got excited when we managed to get the PMO, because the coordination, I mean, for Pendrich to have played, you implementing and you're also trying to coordinate, it could be a mouthful. It could really be a tall order. So when we really were blessed with the infusion of the PMO in NASCEE, where Hlengiwe is playing that coordinating role, we are so critical because she dreams and thinks the project, whereas but partners and the government, we've got other mandates in different spaces, but she's able to coordinate to ensure that we are aligned, to ensure that the various working groups, the MEL, the training, the operation working groups, they're all well-oiled and we're able to deliver what needs to be done. So that's very critical. So one other addition that we should have started earlier, I know we recently started the fundraising subcommittee. So because the funding is critical and there are gaps in this current initiative in terms of funding. So you've got all those, and if the funding component is not addressed, it can scuttle, what we wanting to attain. So the coordination, the governance, the various components, how they all work together to ensure that we deliver not only as units within this team, but as a collective. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Well, there you go, Hlengiwe, you are highly appreciated. So can you share from your perspective what it's been like coming into an existing collaboration as a project management office, and maybe just actually share some of that process. What was the process of moving some of these backbone functions from the collaborating partners into NASCEE, And really, how do you feel like, what is NASCEE learning about playing this PMO role that can maybe inform collaborations and collaboration planning in general?
Thank you so much, Tara, for this opportunity to share the learning. And I think Mamuso has really touched on the reason why we were brought in as NASCEE from a PMO perspective, really critically to acknowledge that already the systems have been put in place, but from a PMO perspective, removing that burden from the implementation partners and finding someone very specific who can look at that and look at strengthening what is already in place, the governance, and also looking at strengthening seamless integration and coordination across all partners, and ensuring that in doing that, we don't leave the department behind, so including the Department of Education themselves. And really the intention is to move away from the fragmented or parallel work streams and people that we actually are giving these initiatives to see this program as one thing and as cohesive and integrated program with a shared vision and set outcomes. So really this role has been really about that. And this really includes things like looking at strengthening the streamlining and the standardization of, the workings and like something like reporting, planning, as well as the fundraising, like Mamuso has said, and looking at a structure that is really embedded into like transparency, that builds transparency, strong alignment and accountability, which is very important when you're dealing with very multi-stakeholder programs. Because it's easy for one to blame each other. So if you have a structure and you have clear accountability structures, then it really helps. And if I may move to the experience of moving some of the functions to the PMO, really, as Mamuso has mentioned and Susanna has mentioned, I came, and you already mentioned as well, I came into the program later on. So the program had already started, and Penrich, who is currently the lead implementation partner, had assumed the role of program management and coordination. So then I came after, they'd already, put structures in place and kind of, figured out, a governance way of working. And that meant that in my coming in, I was already coming in a evolving ecosystem. People know each other, and I'm very new. I come in, and that really means that I spent quite a number of quite some time really building relationships with the people that I'll be working with, because I'm coming from a program coordination background, but for me, I came to realize one of the learning experiences that this program is quite unique in a sense that, well, it's not only multi-implementation partners, but also multi-funders, but also within the different different implementation partners, you've got different human beings that you're dealing with. So I think the learning there is, you can have a coordination, but effective coordination fundamentally is built on strong relationships. So I had to invest time in building relationships, building trust and understanding different partner contexts and aligning ways of working. So that was very important for me, and not coming in and trying to reinvent the wheel. And also, given the complexity of the program, it was also essential for me to understand where the program sits in from a program management perspective, see what's already established, where the gaps are, and collaboratively work with partners to identify solutions. And like I said, the approach is really not to reinvent the wheel, but strengthen what has already been established, which I think Penrich has really done a great job in doing that. And given that experience, I think what the lesson there is, as PMO, it's very important to strike a balance between structure and governance and relationships. So the two are very important, and they speak to each other. You can put systems in place, but if the relationships are not intact, then the systems won't work and people won't really use them to their best benefits. And sometimes we are so quick to go on systems and we forget the importance of building relationships. And I think that's the learning that I'm taking out from this experience thus far. And also the experience of taking some of the responsibilities from implementation partners, which was Penreach, was really to realize that the sensitivity of coming in as a new person and understanding that there's also different stakeholders that you're dealing with. It was very much of an approach that was gradual and deliberate. So you know, you don't have to do it abruptly because you are dealing with a program with a lot of stakeholders. So with that being said, it was a negotiation process where Penreach and myself would sit in and discuss, you know, how we then move around the roles. And I think what we started doing, myself and Susanna, we started sharing like the steering committee meetings, which she was the one chairing them before. But then as a transition process happens, you know, we started co-chairing and so learning from each other. And then that really gradually builds trust, but also allows the implementation partners to understand that, oh, we've got support, and start, you know, sitting back and you know, as the PMO function established. And really that has been really great for continuity and ensuring continuous governance, but also building trust within the same context. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I mean, I think there's a real value to capturing your lessons as you're starting out in this PMO role, because I mean, I think so often, you know, you take things for granted if you're used to doing them, and you're seeing such beautiful, valuable points here, and sort of sharing them now as they come through your own experience of adapting to this process. It's fantastic. Thank you. That actually brings us to the end of the formal panel discussion component. But what the most important part now is for all of our participants to have a chance to ask some questions, to maybe share your experiences as well. I'm assuming many of you have been in this education sector as well for a long time, are part of collaborations yourselves. We have a good chunk of time. We have 15 to 20 minutes. Please, can I just ask anybody to, would you put up a hand or unmute yourself and engage with any of the panelists, engage with me, engage with any of the topics we've spoken about so far, and share your thoughts. Anyone else on the call, you're very welcome to speak. Yes, please, Nelly or Susanna, whoever that is. Come on board, please.
Thank you very much. You know, I have learned a lot from the two ladies after their presentation. But key to me is just to indicate 2 or 3 things as a matter of emphasis, the lessons that I've personally learned in the consortium. Firstly, to say, you know, we realized that with this partnership, we ended up strengthening the service delivery, because I think you know that there's a department with less funding. Even though we have over 1,000 schools, we will say for this financial year, April to March, we're focusing only on a few of them. As an example, 200 schools will be capacitated, and they would as well be given the resources. So with the consortium, we were able to reach more schools in terms of support. And, you know, the consortium came up with specialized training and resources. So for Department of Education, that says, you know, you need to continuously allow the NGOs to participate or to enter your space, because they are bringing in resources that will enhance teaching and learning. The other one is to, you know, as we were looking at the priorities in the beginning, the consortium helped us as a department to avoid duplications, because if we are not controlled and coordinated at the central point, we find, you know, everyone else going wherever they want to go in terms of schools and providing the type of support. But with the consortium, everything was, agreed upon, coordinated, and we have avoided the duplication of the programs for specific schools. That's what I wanted to add. And on the sustainability, we realize as Department of Education to say, what are we supposed to do now that funding might come to an end from the other NGOs? But key to it is to say we have well-informed or well-capacitated workforce. And now we are even looking at the workforce must then go to other schools that did not benefit for them to as well get capacity building. Thank you.
Absolutely. Sheila, I see that you're putting something in the chat. Do you want to mention something verbally as well? Sorry, I'm picking on you.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm just happy to be here. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Nelly, for that addendum. And I think that important part about sustainability and yes, that capacitated workforce within the department, being able to take that on and then really spread it. That is, that's the sort of holy grail, I think, of education, interventions. That's precisely what everyone here is trying to achieve. So that's fantastic to hear. Any other thoughts and inputs from our... Yes, please. Susanna or Nelly again. Yes.
We seem to be hogging the
Please go ahead.
Hand raising, but it's Susanna this time. And yes, what Nelly mentioned now is quite important. And I would like to also emphasize the important role that resources play, and specifically mention in this a grade R capacity building program, the important role that a tool has played, like Child Steps, which is a observational assessment tool for grade R teachers. Through the implementation of the School Readiness Initiative, which is the Roger Federer Foundation program that had happened over time, each grade R teacher is equipped with that resource. And I think an important topic of conversation and an important part of the work as a consortium has been identifying or recognizing the value of having such a tool across the province in each classroom, and how do we all ensure that we make best use of what this is now offering us and the province. So I just wanted to mention that as an important component. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And I mean, I think that's a lovely example of that collaboration mindset, right? Of seeing that here is someone who's developed a very valuable tool that is aligned with another organization's way of working or can be aligned. And so instead of saying, well, this isn't ours, it's someone else's, we won't use it, or we want to develop our own, or whatever it is, it's about, okay, actually, this is very valuable. We can all agree to use your tool in this context and our tool in this context, and then we can connect them and understand their complementary roles. For anybody else who's on the call, have you got examples of that? Has maybe your organization adopted a tool developed by someone else or implemented it in a different place? Have you had those kinds of conversations? Trying to motivate other people to raise their hands and provide some experience. Yes, if you so. Please go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I was trying to find the unmute button. Sorry. Thank you so much for a very informative presentation and insights from the panel. my organization is called LIMO, and we're looking into going into collaboration or beginning stage of collaboration with other organizations. And I wanted to find out what would be a reasonable time frame to, I guess, kind of form form the collaboration in terms of discussing the why, the what, etc., and all that, putting together the governance structure. How long did it take this, the panels to put this together?
It's a very good question. Mamuso, can I hand that to you?
Not specifically on the MPR. Thank you, Sifiso. I mean, they come in all shapes, sizes, and forms. You know, at times we've been part of consortia where a donor actually is headhunting partners because they've got particular outcomes in mind, and then they sort of pull you together, and you need to find yourself and brought together by a common objective and work collaboratively. But where then that could take, I mean, in the Gauteng years, I understand the upside of COVID. I don't know if I'm even allowed to say that. It gave them a whole year of planning. So they had the whole year of planning the collaboration and work together. And then we've also a part of, for instance, WordWorks and Red Ink proactively. We can just come together and formulate and think about what we would like to maybe implement as a duo and approach a funder. So maybe that takes less time, you're 3 months in thinking things through. So the most important thing is for you to identify what you would like to do and with who you would like to do, and take that first step, even before you get the funding, because at times funding might follow, hopefully, good initiatives with a lot of promise, or there might be maybe calls out there for particular organizations who can come and form part of the collaborations. Or maybe you can even approach government in your space. You didn't indicate where you're calling from. So they take different shape, and you just have to have patience, Ndombi. Because, hey, some of us have aged since we became part of these collaborations, because it's up and down, kuningi, but you just have to stay at it, learn, hold your peace, and let others, maybe state what they would like to say, and see how you go. But the challenges, I think, the benefits we believe outweigh, the challenges that are part of all developmental initiatives. Yeah, I'm trying to inspire you, Sifis.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes. So I think that it's an excellent question. And, Mamuso, I think you're absolutely right. There isn't a one size fits all, but it's certainly clear that even when there's a pre-existing relationship between two organizations that already know each other well, it still takes three months at least to come up with a new specific project in a specific context. And then you've only started. You're still going to work out the rest of the relationship as you go. So it's definitely not a quick fix. I see Kangiwe and then Sheila.
Thank you, Tara. I just wanted to add on to the question. Even though I had started after the program had already taken shape, I think it's good to mention to Fiso that something like an M&E framework that you have to do jointly, it's very much important to, interact with everyone continuously to ensure that you're all on the same page. And really that takes up a bit of time. I know in one organization, you can easily get that done in like 2 months with a, M&E experts. But in a multi-stakeholder program, we have to ensure that everyone's voice is heard, everyone's indicators are well, articulated in the framework, and also looking at the department. For us, we work with the department. It's not for them, it's with them, a kind of approach. So we also needed to ensure that the indicators that we have in our M&E framework and the objectives are very much aligned with the government's priorities for grade R. So I think in coming up with a consortium or a collaboration structure, I think it's important to ensure that you don't leave the custodian. If it's a government department, you don't leave them behind, and you put them at the crux of the mix, and that becomes very important, even though it takes time, but it's very much important. Thanks.
Thanks, Lingiwe. Sheila.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. As I said, I'm really excited to be here to hear about how this is panning out. I'm sort of wanting to look at it not so much from the beginning stage, but to the ending stage. I remember when we were running, and some of you may know about the Peace Project, where we brought together a number of NGOs in the early learning sector, together with universities, to think about qualifications at a higher education level. And in that work, we also learned a number of lessons, but my point is more about there were really good ideas that came up there about what we could do going forward, which weren't necessarily directly related to the work that we had done, but they were relevant. And yet, nothing came of them. I think in part because those themselves needed an initiative, it needed funding, it needed motivation, and no one really stepped up to say, well, let's actually do this and make it work because it's important work. Let's raise the money, So what advice could you give? You have spoken about how, the department will be there forever. The organizations will be there for a long time, hopefully. But how do you take forward those initiatives afterwards? I know you haven't yet finished, but that in itself it's about sustaining the collaboration, even if the partners in the collaboration shift or change or the topic changes, or I'm sort of trying to hear a bit about sustainability. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anybody from the project want to take that on? Yes, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's Susanna. Sheila, yeah, I hear you. I think I can use an example of what had happened here in terms of NPR, and maybe that will go some way towards addressing or responding to your question. It was mentioned that we had, as different organizations, been working with each other in different projects and in different ways. And I think because we kept contact, even before NPR was conceptualized, the moment it became clear that here was an opportunity, as Tara had mentioned, someone said we had everybody's phone numbers. We all recognized that this is an opportunity for Grade R, and we could mobilize ourselves pretty quickly. And I think how my point there is that in the same way that we now have these lessons learned or this knowledge that's being developed based on what we are doing here, I do think we will keep that same way of engaging going forward. For example, Nelly and I know we are already thinking of not having the impact of what we're doing in Grade R fade by the time these children go through foundation phase and into Grade 4. So we are already looking at how do we take the gains forward into Grade 4, into foundation phase, and just keeping the maybe it is a positive that we have the department so closely involved and them understanding their priorities, and having a provincial partner as well who also holds that space. But I want to add having NASCEE there as well. And I think that was one of the strengths for us in NASCEE coming in as a PMO, is that they also help to hold that space. So there is kind of a shared knowledge repository out there of what could be next when there is an opportunity then in this universe of education, that we can very quickly mobilize ourselves around it. I don't know if that helps, Sheila, or responds to you in some way.
Thank you. That's very helpful and insightful. Thanks.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more comment. Did I see something, Lerato? Was somebody else unmuted? Okay, thank you everyone for a really fantastic conversation back and forth. I want to hand it over to Mpumalanga to close us out.
Sure. Thank you so much, Tara. And on behalf of IPASA and NASCEE, yeah, we, are quite excited about these case studies, and thank you, Tara, for all your work on them. And I think to the NPR stakeholders that gave up their time to be interviewed and engage with Tara on these case studies. And I just want to flag that we do have 8 other case studies that we have featured as well. Please do download them, read through them. And we are going to be continuing with the series together with NASCEE and unpacking some of the lessons learned from some of the other case studies. So we do hope to bring you along in some of the other future conversations. So just on behalf of IPASA and NASCEE, thank you so much. Viwe, is there anything that you would like to add from NASCEE's side?
Nothing else. I think just to say thank you as well. And we hope that you'll come along for the ride for the rest of the webinars in the series as well. We promise it'll be as engaging, as exciting, as informative. So yeah, we're really looking forward to it. And thank you so much to the panelists as well for giving up time and talking to everyone today. Thank you.
Thanks, Viwe. And thanks
Bye.
everyone. And I think through you, Viwe, Tara will be able to share her presentation. And then when we disseminate the workshop summary, you'll have access to the presentation as well. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.